Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. All right. Weather report, Gulf weather or no? You're going to try to squeeze something?
A little iffy, kind of rainy out there and nasty. I don't have time today, but yeah, it's definitely not too bad for me to go. I'm pretty much still, I'm the only guy out there a few times a year because I'm willing to do things others aren't.
I'm sure you are. All right. Oh, look, Bob is joining us. Let me see. Can you see those things too?
And not till you put them up. You hit the button and they go up. And then whenever I'm talking, I stop and read.
Okay.
I'm Joe Robert.
All right. Had a lot of school stuff that he was doing, apparently. So.
Okay.
All right. And I realized just before the show that this is also May 4th, which I really don't get into that much, except, let me see, can I get him in here?
Okay.
Figure out what the right angle here is. It's a little bit maybe it's too big for my camera. But anyway, that's my Star Wars Squishmallow. That's Baby Yoda. So May the 4th be with you for all those Star Wars fans.
Maybe I should. Okay, I was wondering where we were going with that.
Yeah.
The other thing I would point out is, we didn't talk about. This is the 202nd episode of the show.
And I meant to a couple weeks ago, I meant to say, we're at number 200, and then show's over, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I forgot to say that. So that's 200, and this is 202 of the time we spent on this page on Facebook. I don't have any real clue about how many shows we did on that right-wing news thing, because that whole page was taken down and everything was erased. So all of those wonderful things that we did during that time are all gone. And I don't remember exactly how many we did with Accuracy in Media directly when we first started, but we've been doing this thing for what, 5-6 years?
Yeah, it's like we didn't really know each other that well when we started. Right.
Right. That's the thing is, and like everything else with anything that you do like this, is that it took us a little bit of time to kind of get to know each other, and that's how. And then I think the flow is pretty good now.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we go. You can read this one.
Hey, thank you.
200th episode, but not 200.
Yeah.
Not 200 years.
We're old,
but the show's not 200 years old. Yeah, you never know. Someday, maybe somebody could actually do 200 years of a show.
yeah, it's out there. It's in the future.
There was this woman who just died, right? I mean, she was 119.
Yeah.
She hoped to live to 120, and she was only a few weeks short of reaching 120. I think she was from Japan, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Which a lot of those Asians, they tend to live long. I mean,
it's weird. It's like Japan. It's not all Asians, but Japan and like the Caucasus, which would not strike me as a place where people lived long lives. But a lot of the oldest people in the world are like in that part of the world.
Yeah, I've always tried to. Sometimes I've wondered exactly what it was. I mean, my mother lived to 97. I kind of decided that it would be too melancholy for me these days to keep kind of noting the anniversary of when she died, because that was April 27th, 5 years ago, and I think were we doing a show that day? Maybe we might have even had a show that day. So I thought, well, this is something that I'll note in my mind, but I won't make this big Facebook deal about it at this point in time. Maybe on her birthday I'll say something or whatever. But I don't know what it is, because I mean, Japanese. I mean, what is it? It's rice and fish, probably.
Right. Oh, yeah. A lot of it has to do with what you're eating, and it seems like simpler and less are the keys. Right. Yeah. If you can learn to do it without eating a whole, not enough to be hungry, obviously, or malnourished or whatever. But if the people who eat the big, huge piles of food don't generally make it to 120.
Yeah. So all that, you know, all
Which
those
doesn't look good for me.
all those look, last night I had a Checkers Big Buford and some large seasoned fries. So,
Yeah, you ain't playing.
97 doesn't look too optimistic for me. I'm sorry. I love my burgers and I eat too many fattening desserts along the way, but I do go to the gym to try to offset it a little bit. So Bob says he's in trouble on both ends as well. So
yeah, that's right.
You know him better than I do.
Bob's a good cook, and he cooks good stuff. So he's he has a lot of good stuff to eat.
All right. So the big news really is not the war in Ukraine, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But the big news, obviously, is this whole leak of Alito's draft. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's draft on this Dobbs versus this Jackson Women Health thing, center in Mississippi. Now, this was a big case. The oral arguments were several months ago, and court watchers had said at the time that it looked like, the court was favorably disposed, on this issue in terms of what this was going to be, and was going to uphold this, and which would, in essence, put a dagger right through Roe v. Wade. And so this leak has just made the left apoplectic and everything like this. But you're a good Catholic guy and everything like this. I mean, give me some of your feelings. I mean, conservative, Catholic, you've seen all these things over the years, just as I have.
Hey, one thing that I keep coming back to is we worked this through the system, right? How did this happen? Okay, there was, we put together the March for Life every year. Lots of us took part in that. We elected people who said that they would vote our way on abortion. We got involved in the judge selection process and gave them good candidates for these judgeships that supported with what we wanted to have happen. Congress, confirmed those people. That's their check on the federal judiciary is the confirmation process and impeachment. And none of these justices have come close to meriting impeachment, right? So, we did this by doing the hard work, and it didn't happen quickly, right? It's 50 years that this has been going on. So, we worked and we took the setbacks and we kept marching forward. And now we're on the precipice of victory. We don't have victory because this is not a ruling. This is a draft opinion. Okay. So they think they have 5 solid votes behind this draft opinion. Alito, Gorsuch, Barrett, Kavanaugh, Thomas, right? The Chief Justice wants to, I don't want to use this term, split the baby on this one, but compromise, find a way, some middle ground that preserves it, but doesn't preserve it or whatever. And of course, the 3 leftist justices want to keep Roe as the law of the land. So, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Larry Tribe, a lot of liberal scholars have said, legal scholars have said, that there is no right to privacy, and that the way this opinion was written and constructed and imposed, practically invited it for it to be struck down one day. So now it's getting struck down, and, they're all apoplectic, but they had to know this was coming because they had to know that it was a faulty build. As for me personally, I'm glad that there's going to be less abortion. They want to eliminate abortion in the country, but it will give more children a chance at life. And I don't think that there's anything bad about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, this decision is, what was Roe v. Wade? Was it 1973?
72.
72. So
it's 50 years.
So yeah, we've had 50 years of this. I guess maybe, was it the first March for Life was done in 73? Did they do that a year after?
Yeah, the first March for Life was 73.
Is that what it was? Okay, so we've had 50 years of this being the law of the land. It also goes to that Casey case too, which as well, right? So there's right. That, so they've had these things out there. Once again, I mean, as you said, I mean, I think the other side knew it was coming. I mean, the oral arguments kind of just, it just kind of telegraphed what the thinking was here once you saw that. And also, yes, this is a draft. This is not a final decision. But, what do we know about how this was leaked and who leaked it? I mean, I guess the Chief Justice is calling for some kind of investigation, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to figure out who the leaker was. Are they?
Well, depending on how it was leaked, I'm sure you can go through enough people's computer files and figure out who sent something to Politico. And, I'm not sure it's untraceable. I'm not sure how it happened either, though. So it may be harder than you think. But there's also a very limited amount of people who could have done it, right? Because there's not a lot of people who have access to these opinions. There is a guy who works for Sotomayor named his last name is Jain, Jain. He's one of the people some have said might do it. There's a guy who works for a woman who works for Breyer, who has done a lot of pro-abortion work before she became a clerk for Breyer. Some people are saying it could be her. Jenny Thomas has been mentioned as somebody who could have leaked it. A lot of the people on the left think that the right did it. And, you can sort of see the reasoning, because we have all this explosion now. And if this descends into rioting in the streets and so forth, ugliness, right, that's not going to reflect well on the Democrats. So, the truth of the abortion is, we have won most of the public relations battle. We appear at the precipice of winning the legal battle, but we've not won it all, right? There's obviously a lot of people still on the other side. There are a lot of people who say that, this should be the law of the land. There are people in Congress who now, a lot of Democrats in Congress are now saying, no, kill the filibuster and let's pass, federal law enacting it nationwide. I think that would run afoul of this ruling. If this ruling is what it is, I think that a challenge to, that law would succeed under what Alito appears to be saying. And what he's also saying is, if there's no right to privacy, then all the decisions that were rendered, in the name of a right to privacy are subject to review, right? Including Obergefell, which, allowed gay marriage, Griswold, which allowed sale of contraceptives, and there's a couple more. No fault divorce, I think, maybe came on that. So, all those laws could be back in play, right? You could be able to, you're not ordered to allow gay marriage in a state. Will any state legislature take up legislation to ban gay marriage now that they can? It'll be interesting to see. I don't really see that happening, but it could, right? But even if it did, right? That's a wild and woolly outcome. And the people who push for that, probably, my guess is probably would not succeed politically, right? Even if they managed to find a legislative body where they could get it over the line, I don't think that they could, that they're going to persuade an appreciable amount of their public to go along. I think that, gay marriage is probably here to stay. I think you might have a better time, which is what I've said should happen all along, is make laws that say marriage is between two people, and not dogs and not motorcycle gangs, but two individuals. And, whatever gender they are claim to be is up to them.
Yeah, not that Japanese guy who married some, what was that thing? Fictosexual.
I saw that.
I mean, things are getting more bizarre in this world.
Right. So what's going on in Japan on that is kind of interesting. It is like, love and courtship and touching and sex and hugging and kissing is out, right? Those things are very unpopular in Japan. The guys are not seeking it. And when they do seek it, they seek it like they go to prostitutes and whatnot, where there's no commitment, there's no follow-up, you just get your thing done and leave, right? So, you're not forming families in Japan. In alarming numbers, you're down to about 40% as many schools as there was 20 years ago in Japan, because they don't have any kids to go to those schools. So, I don't know what happens there, but man, there's some scary demographics and some scary questions coming up for how do you take care of all those old people when you have no young people.
Well, yeah, I mean, the situation in Japan is pretty dire because I have read, I don't know how many stories over the years of the aging population that are like in, the ineffective, senior homes, everything like this, but they're being cared for by people that are not that much younger than they are
Right.
because of this problem. I mean, so there, I don't know if you knew Don Feder very well. I mean, but Don's conservative Jewish guy, been a bit writer. He's done a lot of things over the years, but gosh, it's probably been 20 years or more. He was working on a project with someone else that he was helping them promote this, and it was kind of a counter to the whole zero population growth. People, and it was instead of nuclear winter and things like that. Also from environmental, there was a film series called Demographic Winter, and this was a look 20 some years ago about Asia and Europe and the declining birth rate and what it would mean a few 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, is that the replacement rate is continuing to fall. And we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing this all across Asia. We're seeing Japan, Korea. We're seeing this in Europe, that the replacement rate is not there. So now the population gets older. There's not enough kids. Not enough younger people take care of the older people. A lot of the systems, even our social security system, right? It's predicated upon younger people being in the workforce that are contributing to the system that would, in essence, pay the older people that are now into the system. But we're having the gap is growing because we don't have as many people in the workforce. All these kinds of things are going on there. So this is a huge problem. Yeah, the number of schools. There are areas that are really desolate now. I mean, there are villages with no kids. It's really bad, and I think there are a lot of guys. I think there are a lot of men out there that would like to get married, but I also think that there are a lot of women that they got into this kind of career path and other things, and they're not interested in really having commitment, and so it has sent the men into these other directions. And
Yeah.
there is a lack of family formation. And to begin with, Japanese were not having large families anyway. They're not like Latter-day Saint families or Catholic families of the days of old, where they'd have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever kids. Japanese families, you're lucky to get 2 kids in a family.
Yeah.
And now there's 0. I mean, and now you're just not having any of that happening. So it's a huge problem that's going on out there. But this decision, it's interesting because I mean, Joe Scarborough has said, this leak didn't occur from the left; it occurred from a pissed off conservative. But the conservatives really don't have a lot to gain by this, right? I mean, this is if this draft, is really going to be the formation of the final decision, and they do get a 5-4 vote on this, and Roe v. Wade basically is then now struck down in effect. This decision was going to come out the end of June, roughly, kind of traditional period for them to release these decisions. So you're another 2 months is not really going to do much. They already had, to me, it looks a lot like, the Democrats, their cupboard is bare, because we have talked about this ad infinitum, right? Just ad nauseum, just all these things that are going on here with the Democrats. What are their issues? How do they win an election in November? Inflation is killing them. The COVID policies killing them. The immigration policies killing them. I mean, they've got nothing. They can't get diddly squat passed legislatively lately, so they really have got nothing there. And that and the pendulum is definitely swinging, more and more to the Republican side in a lot of these races. Well, if you can bring up abortion, I think they're desperately hoping that this is an issue that can swing voters. But to me, here we are in May. We've got about 6 months, give or take. We're roughly about 6 months away from the election, this midterm election.
Well, I think it's 6 months to the day, in fact.
6 months to the day. Okay. So unless inflation cools dramatically, which I have a hard time believing it's going to cool dramatically between now and then, this is still, the pocketbook issues of this inflationary forces, the supply chain issues. You can't get things that you want to get, and if you want to buy something, it's now 20% higher, more than it was before. I mean, I was just reading an article on Reuters about what's happening in Europe. I mean, they're also having inflationary problems in Europe. So much so that I think there's a French company that is going to identify about 120 consumer goods, and they're going to guarantee no price increases for about a month or two to try to protect the consumer. But that's going to be at their own, at their own peril, because the costs to them are not going to decrease. The inflationary pressures, they may even wind up losing money on some of these products,
Probably will.
by freezing them.
The groceries, I assume that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Very thin margins.
Yeah, I mean, really, the consumer things that people buy the most of, which tend to be groceries and some other items, personal items. And so those are things that are very hard to, no one knows. I mean, no one can really predict this, but if you watch, if you read even a handful of the earnings announcements from these consumer product companies, they are making more money, but the only way they're doing it, but they're also telling Wall Street at the same time, yes, our margins have expanded a little bit, but we have cost pressures that we cannot predict. So we do not know what the future, next quarter, the next 2 quarters, we do not know what the outlook is for our fiscal year, reporting year for you guys in terms of, we're going to.
People always say before you could move on, that's also, the Biden administration is accusing the oil companies and others of gouging, right? Okay, but that's what you're describing right now is what they're actually doing. It's like they can't be sure that demand will stay the same because the inflationary pressure is going to kill the vacation season in the U.S. this year, right? The price of gas and so forth, it's going to be off 30-40%. So they're like, okay, we can go right back down, but then we might have to come back up because we're going to lose a lot of money and a lot of business over this.
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact, on the oil companies, I mean, I was looking at, the Democrats are saying, well, look, all they're doing is, putting money in the pockets of their shareholders because some of them have increased their dividends and they've increased their share, buybacks and things like that. But, they have said that, based on the current, climate, part of the problem for them is that the cost to go drill and everything is dependent. I mean, to go get the cost of renting the rigs has shot up astronomically. So economically, this is not like a couple of years ago. I mean, when things were a lot cheaper, things are a lot more expensive for them, and they're trying to do the equation, the math, saying like, okay, if we go out and commit to drilling, which is a huge expense, we're not really even sure what we're getting out of this. What is the price of oil going to be when we pull it out of the ground and we get it refined and everything like that? We don't know exactly how much money we're going to make off of this because the costs continue to rise at such a rapid clip, that it just may not be profitable at all for them to do anything.
Right.
The Democrats, it's always going after these guys and their profits and everything like this, because we've already gone through that excess, oil profits tax kind of a deal that they want to, implement again and all this kind of stuff. And they have, they really don't have an understanding of how this really works and, how this whole system works. And when they've gone after the meat packing companies, and they've gone after, all that's their kind of knee-jerk reaction. Go after the big companies because they're evil and they're making too much money at the expense of the consumer. But
and who defends them? Who comes out and says, no, the big companies are, providing you products that you couldn't get any other way, and tracking down the ingredients for those products from all over the world and getting them all brought here and put together and brought to your store. No one says that, right? That's just, evil profits. Without profits, none of this happens. Nobody does anything unless they're going to make some money out of it.
Right. I mean, America, we're very, we're built on capitalism, and there are plenty of businesses that fail because
the people who say they're not built on capitalism, they're also built on capitalism, right? The Chinese, what are they built on? Capitalism. Russians, capitalism. North Koreans, what are they doing? They're selling armaments around the world. Capitalism. That you have to have it. It's not an option. Greed is not an option. It's not going to go away. It's a normal part of the human condition. It gets excessive, then that's a problem. But everybody, wants a certain amount of stuff for themselves, and that is not unhealthy at all.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely with this. So, I mean, I think, we're just seeing a lot of different things going on here. But I mean, the Democrats' reaction, I mean, I saw this clip of Chuck Schumer calling it like despicable and all of these things. But I mean, but abortion for a lot of us is pretty despicable,
Yeah.
in and of itself. And what's wrong with the idea? I mean, which it seemed that Alito was trying to infer that in essence, this is going to be a state decision, right?
Right.
That states should make this decision. And so, I was on a call yesterday, and one of the guys that I was on with, he's from Colorado. He said, heck, he said, if I could, I'd move to another state, but he just, there's, for lots of reasons, he can't. But I mean, in his point, he was just trying to make a point. It's like, if your state, I mean, and Denver has very strict abortion laws. If if you don't want to agree with that and everything like that, then there's nothing that prevents you in theory from taking and going to another state that's
right, or working for change within yours, like we
right.
did.
So that there's that option. I mean, that it's not like, the Democrats want to paint this as all of a sudden, abortion becomes illegal in most of the country. But abortion is going to remain legal in some places. It's going to be illegal in other places, and the states are deciding this. I mean,
and it can be revisited.
Right.
So if your state changes its mind, your state can change its mind.
Right. I mean, there's nothing that says that the states are going to remain in that mode. I mean, legislatively, I mean, you could get changes in your state legislature, get changes and all of a sudden the opportunity opens to revisit that, and somebody probably will revisit that. They don't, and that will happen. And so but that's part of the process. That's fine. There wasn't anything in the Constitution that guaranteed this, Roe v. Wade, and so I think Alito wants to send this back and say the states should be deciding this, and it's up to them. And you mentioned gay marriage. Yeah, I don't think that gay marriage is something that's going to go away. I think that the momentum on this is just hard. I mean, and I don't think that these issues right now, these social issues, are going to be as big a draw for the Democrats and make as big a difference in the election as they hope it will. I mean, they're trying to make a lot out of it right now. The media is spending an inordinate amount of time on this, but I don't think this becomes the bigger election issue. Is it really going to help a Mark Kelly? I don't really think that.
Right, because they're trying. They've done all these emergency fundraising appeals. They're threatening our rights. We got to get out. We got to stop this now. Send money, and people aren't sending money because they realize that sending money to the Democrats is not going to stop it, and B, everybody, you're not changing anybody's mind on abortion, right? Very few people are at all persuadable about any aspect of the issue of abortion. So, they were already going to vote for whatever they're going to vote for. And, they may vote really hard, write that pencil, especially tough on the thing, or whatever, but that's all they can do. That's all you're allowed to do. You get one vote. We've gone around and tried to stop all the unmanned ballot boxes on the side of the street and all that kind of stuff. But they're just begging for corruption. Speaking of which, on that subject, there's like a cottage industry around this now, trying to figure out, okay, so this happened at the same time as blank. Was that an accident, or are they offset? Are they trying to take our attention off? Both sides saying this, right? So, but one of the ones on our side is it's taken your attention off that movie 2000 Mules. Have you heard about this?
I've heard about it, but I don't really go in.
Okay, so
educate me.
So what part of this is this is basically the story of True the Vote, which is an organization that's tried to fight for election integrity on behalf of conservatives, and they had cameras on some of these unattended ballot boxes in Fulton County, and they see these mules coming up and dumping hundreds of ballots into these boxes, right? I mean, there's no question that Georgia was a fraudulent election. I mean, you can't flip all the states, but you can flip Georgia. You can flip, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They look pretty convincing to me just on what's out there, right? So, this is a movie that they take the time to explain it, and it's out this week. I believe they had a preview at Mar-a-Lago yesterday, the day before, and I think it's in theaters this week. So,
is this the one that Dinesh D'Souza's behind or something?
Yeah, he's involved in it. Yeah, but it's a big project. There's a lot of people involved in it, but it's going to be out there, and people can see like how this really happened, and they have data, and they have footage. They have people actually committing this crime. So, it won't change it. They're not going to put Trump in as president, right? Biden's going to get to finish his term if he survives, right? Politically or physically. But, that's where, this is headed. But it does tell you that, yet again, big claims that we were told that, that's right. The Hispanics are 4-1 against abortion. Right. And they're 3-1 against gay marriage. Right. So when you're saying, you're going to do these issues to impress Hispanics, you're not. It's like now, somebody said the other day that Black people is up to about 30 or 40% Republican. They're in the 30s somewhere, which is, enormous. Like, what did George Bush get? 6%? So also last night there was there were primary elections around the country. J.D. Vance, former Heritage guy, won the Republican Senate nomination in Ohio. All 22 of the candidates Trump endorsed won yesterday. So, Trump's power over the Republican Party is not done.
Yeah, he's off to a good start with last night. I didn't realize that Vance was a Heritage guy. I didn't look at his. I just think about Hillbilly Elegy, and that's about it. It's an interesting thing too with Vance because what was it, 2016? He was definitely not in Trump's corner,
right?
And everything like that. And I guess Mandel was trying to be somewhat Trumpy, but I mean, look, there were several people in that race, and he got 30%, so he wins. And I think Mandel had, what was it, 24, and the other guy had like 22. So I mean, it's not like
it's not a resounding victory.
No, but he's going to face Tim Ryan. Ryan is not that strong candidate. Ryan only ran about a 1.5% ahead of Biden out there in his area, in his district. So he's not real strong. He's tried to tack to the center. He's been trying to be a little more Trumpian in a sense. He's trying to do what Bill Clinton did, which was try to steal a lot of Republican issues and look like more of a centrist. But that's not Tim Ryan. The real Tim Ryan is not the Tim Ryan that's been on the campaign trail.
It's the one out trying to get people to this overturn the filibuster and let's codify abortion rights into federal law and all this kind of stuff. So it shows his true colors, right?
Right.
Get away from killing babies, and no matter what they do.
And I think that Ohio is now reliably a Republican enough that Vance, Vance can keep that seat, which is good, and make it more conservative probably along the way than Portman. But revisiting the 2020 election in terms of trying to, Republicans have just if this film is fine. You can, that's good red meat, whatever. That's fine. You can look at it. You can make a judgment on that or whatever. But I just don't think that the Republicans do themselves any good if they're going to run this year and they're going to use that as some kind of linchpin of their campaign about.
Right.
You got to move past that. There are other issues.
Well, you're right. But there is. It's important. It is, that voters understand that we were not being crazy, whining crackpots about this. That there was something to it. Okay, but that's all that and a movie's a good approach to that. It's not, you're not really responsible for every fact in a movie. You have some poetic license or whatever, and the story's all out there, and people can watch it and they can get what they want to get out of it, and the things that are probative can be probed, right? But no, it's not going to change the election, but it is important because the Democrats thing is, this is false, and you read the Washington Post, right? Every mention of it, it's like a Washington Post style book rule. if you talk about the election, you must say, and Donald Trump's false claims that it was, the word false has to be in there. And they have to say that these were false claims, right? Because they have to keep impressing that point, right? And so it is important to get into that point and to make that and to weaken that point, right? Because they're not going to stop saying it until you do. And so all the little things like 2,000 mules and the guy in Wisconsin who says, the chief prosecutor of the state of Wisconsin now says their electors should be recalled because he has found so much corruption in how the election was conducted there. So when they say there's no evidence and he's lying and this is the big lie, no. Here's evidence. Here's all kinds of evidence, right, that you just choose to ignore. And that's all we're going to get out of that argument, right? You're not going to bring a lot of people into your camp, but you do stop a line of attack that they have put their spurs into since January 6th.
Well, I just worry about the Republicans. I worry about like a Ron Johnson falling too much into a trap that, Wisconsin's not an easy state to win for the Republicans. And so he can, if he wants to retain his seat, he needs to focus. The guy's got to focus on the economic issues and all the things the Democrats have done wrong. But, don't get into the muck and then get tied to that so much that the Democrats turn that messaging, and focus on that and make it all about that. Because I think that's a loser, that wins for the Democrats and loses for Johnson. And it just makes me a little bit nervous, with that kind of thing. Republicans have a decent chance of retaining, of capturing the Senate, but they've got to focus on the issues that are really damaging the Democrats and hit them hard. Hit them really hard.
Economy, energy, border.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, border is a huge. I guess it was one of the liberal guys in the Post was right the other day that the border polling is almost by itself enough to beat the Democrats in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, as alluded to, you were talking about, the Hispanic vote. I mean, the Hispanic vote is becoming more Republican, which is a big problem for the Democrats. They were,
right.
They're counting on that. But when CNN did their thing was a week or 2 weeks ago, and they did their study, and they were seeing that that Biden is losing a pretty decent slug of black support. That's also a huge warning signal because he's built a lot of that around that, his election, everything, the policies and things like this. And if midterms come around and blacks either don't come out to vote at all or they start voting for Republicans, that's another huge problem for the Democrats here in November. So they've got a lot of problems they're facing.
Yeah, I would make I'm just going through what you said. I would make one distinction. They are not making policy for black people or Hispanic people. They're making policy for rich white people, right? College debt forgiveness, like 70% of that is graduate loans to go to graduate school. Who's going to graduate school? Not poor people, right? Poor people, they may scrape together the money to get a 4-year degree, but then they got to go to work, right? So, it's the rich people who can stay in graduate school and study stuff for 5, 6, 8 years, right? That's whose debts they're talking about forgiving, right? All this, these social issues, the woke Disney stuff, the woke, abortion stuff, all the, those things all, those are for rich white Democrats. That's not for blacks and Hispanics, right? So part of the thing is like they've turned on their working class and they've turned on rural America about as completely and thoroughly and solidly as you can. And it turns out that those people have a lot of political influence if they all get on the right side.
Yeah, and kind of like as Mitt Romney tweeted the other day, it's kind of like, well, why not forgive credit card debt? It just listed a bunch of things. I mean, this is kind of the effect that it might have is that the Democrats start looking, what else can we forgive? All these people. But you're right. I mean, most people don't understand. Most Americans don't understand that this college debt forgiveness is for the upper tier, right? It is. Yeah. It's this graduate stuff people have piled on and everything like that. And it still goes down to the thing that that I have a problem with is just that the government had created this whole student loan debacle anyway, by basically saying, we're going to have this money available and here's all of this stuff. And the schools have zero incentive in my mind to actually price their education correctly,
right,
where it should be, right?
Right.
Because they know that there's this funnel of money coming through these student loan programs. And
right. That's why I always tell people when they write in objecting about this, I'm like, I join you in calling for ending federal involvement in student loans completely, right? Because what would that do, right? It would starve the colleges of money. The price would have to go down to attract students. The course offerings would have to become a lot more practical, right? Because the basket weaving people, that's who can't get a loan. That's who has to have a loan, right? The people who want to go there and learn, architecture, they're going to go to school and learn architecture. They have a plan, right? And you don't have, the colleges, you don't have all these diversity administrators. What is University of Michigan is paying like 40 people, 400,000 or more a year to work in their diversity office, right? If you're paying tuition in Michigan, you're paying for this big layer of bureaucracy that, doesn't make you any smarter or more able to get a job or more competitive in any way. So, you can say, oh, diversity is good. It may be good, but it's also may not be affordable, if you don't have a bunch of government money propping it up. So, I'm all for ending all federal loans. The other idea that gets discussed on this, and, I have to do some more thinking about it, is, if people don't repay, make the colleges responsible, right? The college pays it. Okay. So, then you're going to get into the colleges getting real aggressive about debt collection, right? So, I don't know about that one. That one leaves me a lot of questions too, right? That could get pretty brutal too. So I'm just saying, subtract all the government money out of higher education. Make the people who use it pay for it themselves, and the price will go way down because the people, it'll have to be a price they can afford, and it'll have to deliver value they believe in.
Yeah, I think you and I, our reticence about making the colleges responsible in that respect would just be, we've seen a lot of pretty shady debt collection type of things go on in this, in this country. Yeah. So you don't want that going on there. But that's such an interesting idea to me, to think about. All right, look, in essence, the colleges are going to be on the hook. They've overcharged the students to begin with, right? So they have this thing, and if the students don't pay back the loan, they basically completely default on the loan. Then the colleges should just basically take the hit. The government basically says, okay, or whatever. That's it. You just swallow it. That's it. And that's a cost of doing business for you.
Right. The other thing is, though, some colleges are a lot better able to handle that than others. Obviously, Harvard, could suck up 100 or 200 bad debts a year, but can Morgan State, the
HBCUs, for example, would be different than the Ivy League schools, right? The other thing that always gets me too is just that you see a lot of these schools, they have extremely large endowments, for which they don't really use much of the money to help the students at all. The endowments just grow and grow and grow, and they Harvard's got one of the largest ones in the country, and yet they charge the students 2 arms and a couple of legs now, pretty much to get to school there, and very few people complain about that. But yeah, look, I'm with you. The student loan program, federal involvement in student loans, is an absolute disaster. But you've got the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, supposedly, if she was really, consumer driven and really interested in helping people, she'd think about just the student loan program as overall, and not all this stuff about, just let's forgive the loans for all these people. Let's protect my people and put it on the backs of the rest of us. Okay, so good. I wanted something from Bob here, because after all, he's part of academia.
That's right. Period. That's right. It's a big misallocation of resources.
This backs up pretty much exactly what you just said there. And that's the thing. We talk about the federal government and their ridiculous bureaucracy. Higher education has just ballooned. They keep hiring all these people to do all these things, and you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah. And you don't need that. The people are going to change their hearts, or they're not.
Right. All right. Well, we have spent so much time on this. We are now basically at the end of the show, or more or less. So let's wrap this up. Brian, hit his with some final things.
Okay, something needs to be said about this Disinformation Governance Board.
That's true. We need to talk about that.
Cannot skip that item. Okay, so what that is Department of Homeland Security has set up an office whose mission is to detect disinformation that affects electoral or national security. So in other words, if people are lying to us about, oh, there's a big plague coming to your country, so we spend a lot of money getting the plague and getting ready for this plague, and the plague never really happens. Okay, could we, do a better job of like telling that was a lie up front and not wasting a lot of money on preparing for a plague that's not coming, right? Or, that's an extreme example, but just one. Okay. But then they appoint this clown to run it, who is, and there's really no other word. She sings Mary Poppins songs about her little, the videos are just horrifying. And then, so as a test, right? And so, the Biden administration, Mayorkas, the DHS guy, and the Biden administration, they're like, she's the most qualified person on the planet to identify misinformation, right? She's the best in class. Okay. She said that the Hunter Biden laptop should be considered a product of the Trump campaign, a work product of the Trump campaign. She got that one completely wrong. She said that she was a big COVID vax. She got that completely wrong. She doesn't, she believed in the Steele dossier long after it was proven false, and virtually every line of the thing was proven to either be false or publicly accessible information, right? And she tripled, doubled, and tripled and quadrupled down on that. So when she's had the chance to make the kind of judgments this job calls for, she has failed miserably every time. So she is a hardcore leftist clown. So even if this is the Democrats are assuring us, we're not telling you can't say anything. We're just saying we're going to determine what you say is a lie. Then you put a clown like this in charge of it. It doesn't inspire a lot of faith. So that's one to watch out for. There's a couple.
Let me, and I'll say what a lot of other people have said. It's just that, this sounds like, this kind of, communist era Ministry of Truth. The government is basically trying to tell us this. What in the heck? What world are we living in?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and and the thing about it is like, okay, in theory, it would be good if we were good at detecting when people were lying to the country. Right. Yeah, that's right. The less we see or hear that, the better. It's really fingernails on the blackboard. Her little
okay. But my only thing is that, my bigger thing about this too, and just in a fun sense, was this, that she took one of my favorite songs from Mary Poppins, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and just ruined it forever.
Just brutalized it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can't be forgiven for destroying art like that. But the thing about it is like, okay, so if they're going to do these things, right, first of all, you got to explain to us what you're doing, because, our characterization looks accurate right now, right? That it's, you're going to start trying to determine what is truth and what is not. And you're putting a far lefty, bad singing, kind of obsessive, clown in charge of the operation. How much another blunder.
How much of this was due, was this kind of a knee-jerk reaction on the part of the administration to Elon Musk buying Twitter, right?
Right. That's another one of the things that, the court bombshell, is to cover up Elon Musk buying Twitter. It doesn't need to be covered up, right? What are you talking about? We're fine with people discussing that, which that appears to be going along swimmingly. He's having a good time. Twitter's becoming a lot more fun because, everybody can get in there and really compete in the marketplace of ideas. It's not fun for the leftists because, their reaction to this is, wipe out my competition. I want to be able to say what I want, and if anybody says anything against it is flushed into the sea, right? It's like, no, we listen to other side's views, So as part of what's going on in this country. Let's see what else is on this list that we didn't say anything about. Putin cancer surgery or something this week.
Transferring power. About that, yeah.
Yeah, and so Don't know what that means. He's pretty paranoid about his health and his everything else. So, it's kind of hard to tell, what's real and what's not. And on that one, we wish him the best. As we think we want to get to the post-Putin Russia, but we don't know, right? We don't know who's back there and what they would do. Federal Reserve set to hike the basis points. Is that out yet? That was supposed to be.
It'll be this afternoon. I think it comes out about 2:00.
Okay, so that would make it harder to borrow money to buy houses. There's a housing shortage, or people are telling us, we need to build a lot more houses. I'm not sure that's right. I think that, it's probably not a time to sink a lot of money into housing stock in the country. That's not the reason people are homeless. It's not because there are not enough houses. That's another thing is like they've let down the home, they tell us, you should not go for things, right? That what you end up is with the despair of the homeless. There's a new round of films and whatnot out this week. Also, a thing that needs to be mentioned, the Pfizer started releasing the data that was trying to hold for 75 years. It revealed that, they were telling us that the efficacy of the vaccines was 95%, when in fact they knew it was 12% at first, and then it went down to 1% after 3 weeks. So they knew all along that the vaccines were basically worthless, and they kept selling them to the U.S. Okay, remember, Amy Klobuchar every day is like, oh, we need to let the U.S. government negotiate the drug prices. Okay, it costs $1 a dose to make those vaccines, and our brilliant negotiators chiseled them all the way down to $28 a dose. Okay, so they are not very good at negotiating drug prices, and we're paying through the nose. And now, all over the world, people are dumping those vaccines into the sea because, as a result of the side effects and the fact that they don't work, no one wants them anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. And there was it Moderna or Pfizer? I mean, the reporting of the whole thing about the children, the child vaccine. Mm-hmm. Didn't I see a report that said like the efficacy was like 51%? It's like, I'm sorry, if I'm a parent of a young child, I think it was between 1 to 5 or 5 to 12, whatever the age group was. It was like 51%. And like, why is this? Why would I want to do that to my kid? I mean, what's that?
You have 51% efficacy without a shot, right?
Yeah,
you have about a half and half chance without a shot. 50. It's like, right? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, I'm not going out there and promoting that.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, cases. Once again, we're getting to that whole thing too about cases are spiking a little bit, but hospitalizations and deaths are still low. And those are the numbers, and they do lag a little bit, but they're not really going to go that much higher. But, of course, the media is like, because the TSA,
fingers of those restrictions or those trigger fingers.
Yeah. I mean, because they're saying, we encourage you to wear a mask on planes, trains, and all that kind of stuff. Like, we want to return.
Didn't work before, but maybe this time it will,
We want to return to normal, but the government, there's a thumb pressing down on us. All right. We have reached the end. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Bob, for returning. We always enjoy your comments. We missed you. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again. We're going to be off next week because I've got that 6-week church rotation thing, and my life is just too involved.
Okay. Sounds good. See you in 2 weeks then.
See you. All right. See you, everybody. And we're going to be gone.